Gareth Jones on Speed. Motor Industry News Burp. Following the re-election of Emmanuel Macron as the French president, Renault have announced a new car named after him. The Renault Macron will take direct inspiration from the French leader in that it will promise a great deal, but ultimately deliver very little. News Burp. British sports car manufacturer TVR have announced that they'll be sponsoring the Formula E World Championship. Whilst initially it would appear somewhat surprising that a firm known for its large-capacity, multi-cylinder, internal combustion engine cars is hooking up with an electric race series, the reason for this hookup, TVR say, is that they will have a pure electric version of the Griffith on sale as early as 2024. Industry observers comment that this is about as likely as TVR designing and developing a moon rocket in 6 months. Or 6 years, in fact. We call Gareth Jones on Speed the podcast for petrol heads, but that's not strictly true. You know, we're also the podcast for diesel heads, battery electric vehicle heads, solar powered, and more than that, we don't just like cars, we like all vehicles, like trucks as well. And the other day, I was out in the high street here in Hackney and I saw something I hadn't seen before, and that was a Ford articulated lorry driving down the road. And that made me think, I need to have a conversation about Ford and what they're doing in trucks. And the best possible person to talk to about that is on the line now. He's the managing director and the publisher at Commercial Vehicle Media and Publishing, and is, I suppose, in some ways, the truck equivalent to Gareth Jones on Speed, because Matthew Eisenegger, you're passionate about trucks, aren't you?
Oh, we do like our trucks. Yeah, we do. The heavy trucks, they've got a certain allure. People are interested, even if you're not involved in the industry. People like to look at big trucks, they really do. And we're at a real sort of crossroads now. You were talking about, I believe it would have been either the Ford F-Max or the Ford Cargo. It's a good story. We've got emerging fuel technologies, we've got electric vehicles, electric mobility, we've got hydrogen fuel cell. But Ford, as a traditional manufacturer, global presence, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, gradually moved away from production of heavy trucks in Europe.
They had a partnership, didn't they, with Iveco, and sold out to Iveco. That's why we lost Ford,
yeah,
wasn't it?
That's exactly what happened.
Right.
Yeah, for whatever reasons, a power B decided that mainstream heavy truck production for Europe wasn't their thing. But that doesn't mean to say it doesn't go on in the rest of the world. What you've seen is a vehicle that's built in Turkey by Ford of Turkey and is very successful in its domestic market at the minute. And this is how I understand. They're only really sort of focusing on the left-hand drive markets and what I would call emerging markets. So it's what would be the new EU member states. So the further east you get is probably where they're going to get a sort of market significance. I know there's operators in Britain have bought them via an importership, but like with anything else in the truck world, the UK is a very, very mature marketplace. Mm-hmm. It's a very mature market. So we are very, very reliant on a robust dealer network. That's the key to it. Whichever analogy you want to use, there's no time for downtime. So we can't have vehicles off the road. We're an island nation. You look at any motorway network, 24/7, it's working all the time. And the infrastructure that means is that trucks need to work all the time. So we need a very, very developed network to be able to support it. Now, the Ford truck, I've seen it. A couple of years ago, it won International Truck of the Year. So it's really on the money with its design. Believe their own drive lines as well. A lot of stuff they've developed themselves. But is it right for the UK market? Is it right for the more mature European market? I would say probably yes, to a certain extent.
Can I ask you to qualify that? So what you're actually talking about is not the vehicle itself. The vehicle probably is as good as anything else from any other manufacturer.
Absolutely.
It's all about the package of support that you get when you're running a commercial vehicle, and it's got to run how many hours a day to make a profit for you. Yeah. So you're buying a service when you buy a truck. Is that right?
Yeah, wow. That is the key to it, And we're lucky in the UK, we have a very mature dealer network, with lots and lots of dealer groups. servicing lots and lots of vehicles.
Let's list them, because there aren't that many players in the UK commercial vehicle fleet market, you might say. Have I got them right? Let me see if I can name them, right? I made a list from scratch earlier on. Volvo.
Yeah.
DAF.
Yeah.
Scania.
Yeah.
MAN.
MAN, yeah.
Iveco still, and Renault.
Have we got Mercedes-Benz in there as well?
Mercedes-Benz. What do they call their big one? The Actros, is that right?
Actros is a big one, yeah. Actros is a heavy long-range vehicle. But just going back to what we were saying about the Ford. Now, don't get me wrong, you will see, and you've seen one on your street, you will see the vehicles over. They predominantly are Turkish registered. They're running from Turkey.
Right.
And there is a support network. In fact, if anybody wants to look at the Ford F-Max or Ford Cargo, look at it, the representation they've got and the backup they've got, even if they're not represented as a dealer network, is there. So it's there, but again, would you be able to buy one as people have bought them in the UK?
So who are Ford using for their support? Is it their van dealer network in the UK?
No, absolutely no. When they started, they'd got a support recovery arrangement with, I believe, TIP.
Okay.
Which are a trailer rental business. So they did have it there from when that vehicle was launched.
So they're outsourcing it.
Yeah.
They have another firm supplying that support. So it is there. They've put a package together themselves. I get it.
Let's have a quick look. Now, here we are. Now, I don't think this is right, but I'll read this to you.
Go on.
I wonder how many, BLB's Big Lorry Bob, BLB readers knew this. The new Ford Cargo 1846T has call centre support at 40,000 service points in 38 European countries, with a total of 46 countries. Thanks to Ford roadside assistance service in Europe, the drivers will receive towing, air-stroke bus ticket accommodation and transportation to get their vehicle back if there are any problems. So they have thought about it.
Fascinating. It's interesting that when you take on a mature market, you put the sort of separate package together and eventually might just absorb the whole thing themselves. But I guess they're being adaptive. They're good at that. Hey, listen, talking about adaptive Ford, I know that the new Volkswagen Amarok was teased or launched today.
Yeah.
That's built on the Ford Ranger platform. So there's Ford working with VW as they have done.
Yeah, they are doing, I get some of the bigger platforms as well are going to be sharing them. Again, you've caught me on a little bit of the back foot, but I do know some of the vehicles will have shared platforms. But you've got to bear in mind where we are with vehicles now, whether you're looking at a heavy truck, whether you're looking at van, passenger car, the things are so blindingly expensive to develop. And in particular, when you're looking at a pickup market, which is a big market, but for one manufacturer to sort of, and I would imagine they're going to go down the global, it'll be a global product, is easier to share. Vans have been doing it for years, because if you're developing a platform for a passenger car, well, that's fine. But the numbers are just not the same. So it just makes financial, commercial common sense to maybe share the burden a little bit and give it your own little twist, I suppose. You
don't know, do you, roughly how many new trucks are sold in Britain in a year? Any idea?
The market used to be always between, I think it was 30 and 40,000. A bad year it'd be 30. A good year it'd be 40, 44,000.
There you go. That's a significantly smaller market. You've got to do partnerships. There's some exciting stuff happening in battery electric vehicles and hydrogen electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles in cars. What's happening in the world of trucks equivalent to that?
Exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah. The problem with trucks is, as the name would imply, the commercial vehicle's there for a commercial purpose. And we talk about the payload, and guess what? It's the load that pays for the vehicle. EV technology in heavy trucks is there. It's happening. It's available now. There's vehicle manufacturers have got products of it. You can go buy new Renault trucks, their vehicle range, I think called E-Tech. I can't. They've all got these little brands they like to use.
And it's a pure electric tractor unit?
Well, no, it's a rigid vehicle. Now, this is where we've got to sort of do a little bit of myth busting and dispel rumours. At the moment, battery technology for heavy trucks is only really suitable for rigid vehicles that are involved in urban distribution or urban collection. Now, where you live, in Jones Manor, there'll be a refuse collection vehicle that goes up and down your street once a week or whenever it is. That is the perfect solution for EV.
Right.
Based on around 26 tonnes. The range, depending on who you listen to, is good for about 150, 160 kilometres a day. Go bear in mind, refuse collection, Monday, in one street, one area, one borough, Tuesday in another borough, and that's how it works. It's very, very planned, it's regimented. So the secret to it is being able to get the vehicles charged back at the base. We're about to see the new Mercedes-Benz Actros, e-Actros. They've got their own solution to more of a rigid solution. I've seen it. I've got an EV tracked unit under development, like all major manufacturers have. Volvo are on the cusp, and I have launched. I think I should have been in Gothenburg a few weeks ago, but blighted by a certain illness called COVID-19, which I couldn't travel on. But, so all the major manufacturers are on it now and are gradually rolling their things out. But the successes are going to be based around urban distribution because of the range.
This kind of makes sense to me as well, because the idea that this sort of electric revolution would happen from the city outwards, where it's in some ways most critical and works, and the technology will evolve. Just picking up on terminology there that we listeners might not be absolutely certain on. You've got an articulated lorry, or you've got a rigid. Now, a rigid is anything that isn't articulated.
Anything that doesn't bend in the middle,
15-ton delivery trucks.
Yeah, a rigid vehicle. If we were to see any of the parcel companies round your streets, chances are they'll be working on a 7.5-ton vehicle. A 7.5-ton, that is what we call the gross vehicle weight. That's the amount of weight that vehicle can physically impose on the road. Right. They're quite popular. And as we go up the weight, we have incrementals at 12, 13, 14. We don't see many of those. The next one up from that realistically is about an 18-ton vehicle, which again, same rules apply. They're the bigger ones. You'll see those with quite big curtain side bodies. And the bodies where the curtains will come back in and see the pallets loaded inside. Yep. And then from that, we go into multi-axle rigids, which, as the name would imply, there's a number of axles on there, which would be things like you'd see engaged in construction work with tipping bodies. We call those 8-wheelers because there's 4 axles and 8 wheels. Yep. There's a few more than 8 wheels, but we're not getting too hung up on the terminology. But they're the things you'd see going on and off your building sites. And then we get into articulated vehicles. Now, articulated vehicles, as the name would imply, a truck, a tracked unit, which has what we call a fifth wheel, which is basically a pivot point on the back of it. Yep. And beyond that, we have a trailer, predominantly with 3 axles. They're the things we see zipping up down the motorway. So that's a very sort of brief sort of breakdown of what we're seeing out on the road.
As you know, I spent lots of time in trucks, usually in the trailer of an Arctic, moving rock and roll equipment around back in my rock and roll days. Yeah. We also drove around Europe in a Ford Cargo. That was about as big a thing you could drive on a conventional license at the time.
At the time.
Yeah. And so I've always been interested in trucks. I'm excited to hear that there are functioning rigids now that are battery electric vehicles.
You've got to bear in mind, though, I don't care what anybody says. There is a lot of life left in diesel yet, but there are solutions available now without any fancy modifications, any technical updates, anything at all. If you're running a diesel vehicle, a heavy truck, there's a fuel called HVO, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil. Now, HVO, as it's known around the trade, will give you an immediate massive reduction in CO2. Now, when we talk about heavy trucks, we still have the impression that these things are dirty, smelly things. Are not at all. Absolutely not. Rumour has it the air coming out of the truck is cleaner than air going in. The big thing at the minute, the NOx, the nitrous oxide, the particulates have all been dealt with through filtration systems after the fuel's been burnt in the exhaust system. They've gone. The big thing at the minute is CO2. We've got to reduce CO2, and the only way you can reduce CO2 is look at alternative fuel sources. But realistically, for trucks and truck design, is burn less fuel. So we're trying to have vehicles more aerodynamic, more efficiency, just to bring that CO2 number down.
In some ways, the compulsion on the trucking industry to move is greater than on the private car owner because there's a commercial reason, if you like, for your existence, and that will force it, won't it? And we have to do that. Okay, so we've talked about rigids and talked about inner city use and semi-urban and urban electric transport. How about your tractor-trailer articulated units? I know that Hyundai have got a pilot scheme of a bunch of hydrogen fuel cell tractors operating in Europe.
I think they're in Austria. Again, the technology's there. Let's not kid ourselves. Hydrogen technology, hydrogen fuel cell. I mean, you've got a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is basically the same as electric vehicle. It's a different type of battery that you use. Just to keep it simple.
Different way of storing your energy.
But basically, that's all it is. But you're using electromotive force to move the vehicle forward. It's lighter, so the penalties in relationship to payload are significantly reduced, but the vehicles are so horrendously expensive at the minute because, where we're developing EV trucks here, in relationship to development terms, the hydrogen's a good way behind it. So obviously the economies of scale and cost weigh that out. But hydrogen fuel cells have been used in buses for a long time. It's not a new technology. There's vehicles working in the UK.
Yes, I see them around here. They're a partnership between Dennis and Chinese firm. It's not BYD, is it? No.
BYD, yeah.
It is BYD.
BYD do bring buses and coaches into the UK. I mean, I'm not a bus and coach.
Yep, they're operating in my neighbourhood here.
I don't wear an anorak.
I think we all do in some small way, though, don't we? How about Tesla? Now, we're going to talk about the disruptors, because Tesla have been promising the Tesla Semi, as they call it, or the Tesla truck. What's the latest on that from a truck industry point of view? Are we cynical about it?
Well, first and foremost, when they broke the story about the Semi, so you've got me sitting there, I've got about the Tesla truck. My sister-in-law has got no interest in commercial vehicles at all. Said to me, God, have you seen this Tesla truck they're doing? Now, to me, whether it goes anywhere, whether it gets traction, what it's done is actually brought EV technology into the commercial world. I'm not saying by the back door, because it's not.
But by suggesting ways it could be done.
Exactly. But what it has done, your Mr. and Mrs. Average on the street will have no idea that these vehicles are already available from various manufacturers and are ready to break cover. So it's waved the flag for where the industry is going. So to me, I think it's a great story. Again, I don't know too much about the technical detail about it, but what it's done is it's awareness, and it's using that brand to make awareness for the industry.
You're going to love this. As far as I know, aren't Amazon running 2 battery electric DAFs now?
DAF, as well as other vehicle manufacturers, are developing trucks for main high street brands. And what you're going to see in the not too distant future is a number of products from a number of manufacturers working with that. DAF have got vehicles already out there working with... I genuinely can't tell you, because I'm not necessarily involved with the project, but I know...
Leave it there. Say no more.
But the vehicles are out there and coming to a high street near you soon.
Fascinating.
It's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Just wind the clock back to COVID-19. But when you look at what's happened, you've got to try get some crumbs of comfort. You've got to try find some sort of nugget that is a good thing to come out of a horrible situation.
Yeah.
If you remember at the start of COVID-19, where the world virtually stopped, planes stopped flying, trucks didn't stop moving, but there's the trucks out of anything were pushed to the fore, and we really did value the commercial vehicle industry and the logistics industry, I should say. We had dolphins swimming up into Venice, and a lot of London boroughs did experience an immense improvement in air quality.
Yeah, I noticed it.
So we've proven that things can be done. But I mean, that's an extreme way of doing it. But what it really has done is made people aware that we can do something quite quickly. But there's not a silver bullet for all this, Gareth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of, I think if I'm getting on my high horse with all this, first and foremost, I've said it for a long time, transport is too cheap. Mm-hmm. We want here and now. We don't want to wait till the weekend for the goods. We want it tomorrow. And what we'll do is we'll order, if it's clothing, we'll order 3 or 4 of them, try the ones that we like, hang the other ones on the door handle outside, and the van comes and takes it away. To me, that is an ultra premium service.
Yeah.
We live in a square, and it's sort of a residential area. Now, we'll get maybe 2 or 3 Amazon deliveries a day in here, as well as other random subcontractors working for other people. Now, surely there's got to be some sort of planning on the face, some planning software that can sort of say, well, hang on a minute, well, why is this delivery company delivering 3 times into this square when if we planned it slightly differently, we could have 1? Mm-hmm. And again, and I'm just sort of trying to think about making a better and cleaner world for everybody. I honestly think the logistics industry, heavy trucks, I think they run 12 hours wrong.
Well, they should all run at night.
Yeah, their working day should start at 7 o'clock at night and finish at 7 o'clock in the morning.
It does for a lot of drivers, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it does.
Yeah.
It does, but there's a lot that it doesn't. And, if you do the calculations to take a vehicle from standstill to 90 kilometres an hour at 56 and then stop it and start it again, that's where you're burning the fuel. Right. If you could have the longer runs. Yeah. I'm also a staunch advocate of bigger vehicles as well. I know people don't like it, but if we, like we do in certain European, Sweden, for example.
Yeah, economies of scale. You can carry a greater payload.
We have got a campaign running or an initiative running in the UK and has been running for a few years called LHV, Longer Heavier Vehicles. But to me, if you look at what's going on in Sweden, and some of the Nordics, they're running at 60 tons gross vehicle weight. We're at 44 tons at the minute. So again, 44 tons being the actual physical weight we can impart on the road surface on 6 axles. In Sweden, with 60 tons, but 25 metres long. So it's virtually, in dimension, it's virtually twice as long as your traditional truck you'll see on the motorway. Uh-huh. To me, for efficiency, you're using one truck to move that. Yeah. Everything weighs in its favour. The other thing, again, we're talking about what's out there. We're talking about autonomous driving. We talk about connectivity. They're the buzzwords.
I would imagine not full autonomy, but the sort of level 2 autonomy that we've got in cars at the moment, your lane keeping and that preventing you crashing into someone in front. That is really essential on clogged motorway networks in the UK. And I bet that's a real assistance to economy for a truck, isn't it? There are savings to be made.
There are. I've been all over the world seeing these demonstrations, and to get the efficiency, you've really got to dial these trucks. And they will. The systems are there. All we're doing to autonomous driving is combining technologies. Lane guard assist, adaptive cruise control, and ABS, advanced electronic braking systems. So the technology's already there, and we're just linking it up. But to get the efficiency, so just a vehicle driving on its own down the motorway, I've done it. You've got all these fancy systems. It'll keep you safe and it'll keep the vehicle and pedestrians and everybody else. Marvellous technology. I've seen the demonstrations. It's brilliant. We can go the next level to that, where we've got autonomous driving, where we're actually bringing these vehicles really, really close. And I've seen a demonstration where they had a procession of these trucks 30 centimetres apart.
So they create a train of trucks that operate together. And they're transferring data from the front to the other members. That's how exactly, and everything's instant. So when the first truck hits the brakes, everything's. But the efficiency there, it's a fuel efficiency because it's like everybody's now being behind each other. Yeah, a peloton.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. But this is my personal opinion that in certain countries, certain motorway networks, that will work and it'll work a treat because you've got not lots of traffic on there. You've got vehicles that will be doing 300, 400, 500 miles. No problem. You drive down from the south of Birmingham to the Scottish borders. How many junctions, how many intersections will you get? So the technology's there, but will it be usable in our network? Yeah. Now, it would be usable if we ran the vehicles 7 p.m. at night to 7 in the morning.
Right. Yeah. I see that.
So there's a lot going out there. But if I were to give you sort of a flavour of where we are, at the minute, it's all about alternative fuels. It's all about electromobility. That's the thing. And you pretty much bet every penny you've got that every heavy truck manufacturer out there has got something about to launch or has launched or, again, not too far away to be launched. But with other things that we need to address as well.
I'm interested in what the disruptors are doing. There are a bunch of new battery electric vehicle manufacturers. Who are the key players at the moment? I know in the States you've got Rivian and the Tesla Cybertruck. But in the UK, who are making interesting delivery trucks?
A lot of this, they're either about to launch or are launching, or I've got work in progress. And we call the disruptors. We've been talking about existing vehicle manufacturers. And what they're doing is basically taking their platform and
electrifying it.
Yeah, electrifying it. It's not just as simple as that. But we're taking their vehicle cab, their vehicle chassis rails, removing the diesel parts and replacing it with electric motors, batteries and everything else. So it's engineered from the ground up. But we've got vehicle manufacturers entering the market with brand new product. And one of those is Volta. And if you look at their vehicle...
The Volta Zero.
That's it.
Yeah.
They've been very, very clever of how they brought that vehicle to market because it is a true global product, if you wanted to, because the steering wheel is in the centre. It's not sided to either left or right.
Right.
And again, there's another one coming. It's Teva, T-E-V-V-A. They're another manufacturer entering the market with brand new specific products. So for independent businesses, or new businesses, I should say, it's marvellous.
What is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, and there is an absolute need to come up with some new ideas at the moment, and that empowers non-traditional manufacturers to come up with radical ideas.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or at least market that idea.
These things are horrendously expensive, from a development perspective. You really are. You're coming from the ground upwards with these things. You're talking immense amount of money, but it's not changing. Once I've launched it, again, there are people who are far more qualified than I am to talk about batteries. But the batteries that we're using now will not be the batteries that these vehicles are going to be powered on in another 2 years' time. We're about to launch a new magazine called Destination Net Zero. Now, this is about emerging technologies in the commercial vehicle industry. It's not just about electric. It's trying to bring together everything into one place. Now, when I started thinking about doing a forward feature list for this, we, as a publishing house, we publish 4 magazines. At the end of the year, we start looking at our forward features list for the next year.
Yeah.
I have not been able to do a forward features list for Destination Net Zero magazine because the stuff I was planning on writing about, or we were writing about in Q4 this year, Q4 2022, we've already addressed it in Q1, and if not Q4 of 2021, because that's how fast it's moving.
Yeah, wow.
The technology is moving at such a pace.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's like watching the space race, which was, again, necessity forcing invention, you know.
It is, but I always try as best I can to sort of balance these things. Now, I've just returned from a van event, an LCV event in Barcelona with Ford, and we were looking at the new e-Transit.
LCV, light commercial vehicle.
Commercial vehicle,
yeah.
And it's what's going to be their offering to the world of transit, which is totally EV. Fantastic vehicle, but they all are. Everybody's got a great product out there. It's dead easy. We've spent, 20, 25 minutes talking about the vehicles. That's the easy bit.
Really? Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Because I'm putting my trust, I've been with Ford yesterday in Barcelona, putting my faith in that blue oval. I know that vehicle will come into my work premises and it will be totally fit for purpose and it'll be brilliant. I know that every truck that I drive, you're putting the faith in the vehicle. They're the easy bits. It's how you adapt your business to work with electromobility vehicles. Wow. How are you going to charge them? Wow. We talk about headroom. We talk about headroom on the grid. Is your facilities capable to be able to park 20 new electric vans in there or 20 electric trucks overnight and charge the things up? And if not, how do you make them fit for purpose?
So what we've got to develop is an integrated transport, energy transfer and creation and distribution network. Little independent operators, a small commercial truck operator who's got 10 tractors that they're operating. What's he going to do? Get his own little nuclear power plant developed by Rolls-Royce?
I had exactly that same conversation the other day because we'll talk about sustainable fuel. I mean, if we can, we'll talk about everything we want, but yeah, we do need sustainable energy. Rolls-Royce with their mini nuclear, basically submarine technology in it that they've done about repurposing into power stations. But the thing about it is, as facilities, you may want to or be forced to, because of low emission charging or clean air zone charging, you may be forced to have to go down that route. Now, you want to do your bit, you've got to do your bit, but who pays for it? Boris set this zero tailpipe emission for 2030. We're 8 years away from that. So the decisions, and you've got to bear in mind, some of these vehicles as well, because they are ultra specialist, are not going to perform in the normal life cycles of a normal truck or a normal van. By implication, they are going to be running into and beyond into the next decade. We're 8 years away from that now. You've got to really start thinking, hang on a minute, one, I've got to embrace this technology, or even if I don't want it, I've got to adapt to it. So I've got to invest some. Are my premises right? My location right? So it could well be not just buying the vehicles, it could well be that you're having to up sticks and move to somewhere closer that's either better for you to supply a level of service you need to your customers, or somewhere where you can get the rights of power play into it.
Wow, that's interesting, because that's a flip of what's happening in other industries where location is less important. You can work from home. However, when you're talking about moving stuff around, you need to be at a node point where you get to the maximum number of people. So the requirements on transport of commercial goods is forcing location. And wow, that's a shocker. You can't buy a truck. You're going to buy a whole industry. You're not a trucker anymore. You're a business operator,
Absolutely.
A landowner, land leaser. Whoa.
The vehicle is the easy bit.
Interesting.
It's how you prepare your business and the money you've got to invest to get the power into it, because these things are not cheap.
Tell me, of those big players I listed earlier on, the traditional HGV brands, you might say, who owns who these days? Volvo, that's nothing to do with Geely, is it, who own Volvo cars?
No, Volvo is an entity. Volvo Trucks are a separate entity to what was going on with the passenger car business. But Volvo and Renault are one organisation. So Volvo as a group of Renault Trucks, not Renault Cars, are completely different again.
Yeah.
Right? Iveco is just basically was part of the
I can tell you who Iveco. Please, sir, can I hold my hand up? And can I Iveco, wasn't it? Magirus Deutz, Fiat Automobili, Ford Motor Company. I think that was it. 4 of them, weren't they? International Vehicle Consortium or something it stood for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They ultimately ended up under the sort of ownership of Fiat, and then moved from Fiat to Fiat Power. So anyway, they've been spun off for a separate entity now.
Right.
They're a standalone business.
Fantastic.
Scania are part of, now they use a brand called Traton, which is the heavy commercial arm of VW Group. So within that is Scania and MAN.
Really? VW own MAN? I knew they had interest in MAN. They've got interest in Scania too. Wow.
Yeah, like ownership and shareholding. I'm not, you'll have to look in the FT for that. But they report back into VW Group under that Traton brand.
Fascinating. Mercedes-Benz are, of course, Daimler Group.
Yeah, that's it.
Have they got a partnership with Chinese investment possibly now as well? There's a lot of that, isn't there? There's a lot of trucking in China.
They've got an arrangement in India as well. Bharat Benz.
I've got two questions to ask you now. I think we've covered all the big people. DAF are what used to be Leyland DAF. They manufacture in the UK, in other territories as well.
Yeah.
Who owns DAF?
PACCAR, which are based in Seattle. And they're the same organisation that own Kenworth and Peterbilt. So if you ever watch these big American road movies and we see these big Kenworths and Peterbilts, that's the same organisation. There's a few other brands that fall in under there as well. I'll tell you the story that's not told enough, this. But we all talk about the demise of the British motor industry and how we don't make anything in Britain anymore. And we all go back in the day. Well, DAF's quite an interesting story because DAF are built in Leyland. We call it Leyland Assembly Plant, or Leyland Trucks, which are the assembler of DAF vehicles.
Yep.
Now, DAF, you look around your home now, can you think of any product in your home or anything you see that particular brand? Now, there's probably an exception to prove the rule here with, like, Apple. But is there any product you can see that particular brand, 1 in 3 of that particular thing, that vacuum cleaner, 1 in 3 in Britain is sold is of that particular brand? Because I can't think of a lot of things.
It's that successful. Is that what you're saying?
1 in 3 trucks sold in Britain is a DAF.
Wow.
Which by implication means just about 1 in 3 trucks on Britain's road are built in Britain.
That's good.
It's never spoken about that.
A bit of proper old automotive, heavy engineering.
Yeah.
Been going at it long enough to know that we can deliver, we can compete with cheaper European factories,
Exactly.
Chinese importing.
These things, like all manufacturing, like all industry, it's an evolution. It's constantly changing. If you go back 50 years, British heavy truck manufacturing, there's probably 25 manufacturers, or certainly 20.
Yeah.
And eventually being consolidated into realistically into what was 3 brands, one being ARF. Ford became part of the PACCAR family and then brought their manufacturing in with Leyland. And then the ERF was an part of MAN. But other than that, if you look at some of these old traditional brands we talk about, there was Sedna Atkinson that ultimately became part of the Iveco group. But we talk about Scammell, we talk about AEC, we talk about Guy, talk about Thornycroft.
The Guy Warrior, that was a construction truck of the 1960s. Yeah. I remember that.
All these things, BMC, Albion, all these things over time gradually merged into what became British Leyland. And ultimately, obviously, the business went into receivership in 1993, but came out the other side, a very, very strong organisation under one brand, and had brought all that expertise and everything with them. There
was some bifurcation in the Leyland brand as well, because I know Leyland had an operation in India. Is it called Ashoka Leyland?
Ashok Leyland, yeah.
Ashok Leyland. That's still selling vehicles all over the Indian subcontinent in the Leyland brand, which is lovely to know. The traditional L in that rose. I stumbled across that recently and it warmed my heart.
That's right.
All right, listen, we got to wrap this up. I would talk forever about this with you, so we got to come back and do more. Tell me 2 things. Where can we find out more about trucks from the work that you do in terms of online and print? Tell me. We have a number of publications. We try sort of cover the market across either driver market or high-end compliance. We do CV Driver magazine, which is name what it implies, a driver magazine for truck drivers, distributed around motorway service areas, truck stops and the lorry washers and the like. We've got Daft Driver magazine, which the name would imply is a brand-specific offering, which, again, is a little bit more varied. Not all truck stuff in there. There's quite a bit of lifestyle stuff that, would engage with any reader that's got an interest in technology and engineering, as I call it. Full disclosure, I have written for Daft Driver magazine. I've written a number of articles about trucks and cars, and it was a privilege to do so. Thank you, Matthew. So I have to declare an interest. Go on, to go beyond Daft Driver. Tell me the others. Yeah, we've got Trade Van Driver magazine, which is our van offering, which, as the name would imply, is for professional trades.
that are used in vans.
Oh, transit and traffic.
Oh, that's it. There you go. Which is through independent builders, merchants, wholesale electric suppliers alike. And we also do a magazine. We work very, very closely with FORS, which is the Fleet Operator Recognition Scheme, which is an operator audit process which is designed to sort of help and improve and showcase high-end compliance operators in Britain. So everything's available. There's a website attached to every title that we do. Go online, have a look.
Thank you. Listen, one last question. I'm going to take this right back to where we started, because I think one of my favourite trucks of all time, actually, small sideline, a huge truck rescue unit came down our street the other day, and I chat with a bloke there, and I said, do you know what? The word Holmes Wrecker comes to mind.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Holmes Wrecker? Double hook on the rear, short chassis.
Back in the day, when I was a rookie mechanic, rookie technician, whatever you want to call it, apprentice, our Leyland Hippo recovery truck had a Holmes 750 lift on the back of it.
That's why it was a Holmes Wrecker, because it was a Holmes lift on the back. I didn't know that. Thank you. So, to bring it right back, in this neighbourhood, I saw a Ford truck, and it reminded me, I love Ford Motor Company. Probably my favourite truck of all time was the ultimately ill-fated Ford Transcontinental.
Transcontinental. Yeah, there's the word. Yeah.
Man, what happened? Why did it fail? What happened?
We're going back into the early to mid 70s, when, if anybody's out there and has seen an old programme now, but I remember watching it as a kid, called Destination Doha. And it was about a company based in Kent called Astrans, which the trucks run into the Middle East, as the name would imply. That's where they were going, in across mainland Europe and Turkey and all these other countries. At that time, there was a struggle moving the amount of requirement of product to the Far East, and they couldn't get enough on ships. Railways didn't go there, so you needed bigger vehicles with more cab space. So at that time, Scania and Volvo and Mercedes-Benz to a certain extent had taken the lead in that. And I think other European manufacturers, one being Ford with Ford Transcontinental, the other one being Leyland with Marathon and Super Marathon, and the other one being Bedford with Bedford TM, all decided they needed to get... I'm using the Middle East as an extreme, but, Europe was really opening up as a place, if you see what I mean, so being able to move goods in and out.
The common market, as it was then.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was, so the restrictions were... It was still problematic with border controls, but at least it was open for business. So a number of manufacturers, excuse the pun, jumped on the bandwagon as well. And for whatever reason... the success is quite an interesting story, the Transcontinental, because it really was
ahead of its time.
It was, but the cab was originally the Berlier cab, which was French, which ultimately became the cab that went on the Renault Turboliner and Highliner.
Right.
The engines were Cummins. I think the gearbox and back axle was Fuller. So it was really an assembly of different products, different engines.
Do you know what? I'm reminded, I've got to wrap this up now, but what you described there was Ford putting a package of suppliers and things together to offer a service. And that's exactly what they're doing now with their heavy goods commercial vehicles. They're outsourcing and pulling a package together, which kind of brings me back home. But my final question, the other one was, briefly, what's your favourite truck ever, Matthew, and why? Have you got one?
I just remember, I'll go off on it. We'll be here for another half, and I'll keep it brief. I grew up just outside Leeds in a village called Driglington, and between Driglington and the next village, Gilderson, runs the M62. And as a small kid, my sort of time, as a family, we didn't have a car. We were not from a transport background. So my idea of pleasure, spending some time with my dear old man, God rest his soul, was stood on the motorway bridge waving at trucks. So, but the one thing I do remember, and we have spoken about it, is the Ford Transcontinental, because I remember looking at that thing in the mid-70s, and I was probably a 6-7-year-old small boy looking at it as a monster. It looked like a wall,
didn't it?
It did, and I knew nothing about the history. I knew nothing about the intentions of it, but its sheer presence was, to me, jaw-dropping. So, was it a commercial success for Ford? No. But did little kids like it? Yes. And I've just said I'm not a man that wears an anorak, so I've just let my guard down there, innit?
I am happy, Matthew, to admit that I wore a very similar anorak to yours in that context then, because I chose the Transcontinental. It's amazing that it means so much to you. Hey, enough. Listen, thank you, Matthew Eisenegger, for talking to us on Gareth Jones on Speed today. Say goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy.
And thank you. You took us somewhere we weren't expecting. That's remarkable, and to be welcome. Thank you. This was Gareth Jones on Speed. See you for the next episode, which will probably be about cars for a change. See ya.
For information on how to contact the show, see pictures, get song lyrics, follow us on Twitter, find our Facebook fan page, or to sponsor the show, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!